Welcome to Season 2 of the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. I'm Em, a sexologist and kinkster. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize desire in all of its forms, including darker desires. Each episode, we dive deep into the psychology of desire with a sexpert, everyday kinkster, or a kink expert. This is an independent podcast. To support it, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at psychologyofdesire.com, where you'll also find deep dives into desire and surveys that you can participate in. You can also sign up there to get the podcast delivered directly to your inbox when it's released. And now for today's episode. Before we get started, I have something very excited to announce. The podcast has been nominated for the Australian Adult Industry Awards in the category of Best Podcast. So if you'd love to vote for the Erotic Realm to win this category, it would be amazing to have your support. I'll put a link to the voting website in the show notes, and I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a click and a vote, and who knows, maybe it will win Best Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. If you'd like to support the podcast, please consider checking out the brands that support the Erotic Realm. There's Firm Tech, whose tech ring offers fascinating insights into sexual health by tracking erection quality and nocturnal function. Splash Blanket, who create luxurious waterproof blankets designed for comfort, intimacy, and real-life messes. ProDX Health, who offer discreet, at-home STI testing. While Karoo and Lovents make premium pleasure technology, from couple toys to long-distance interactive devices. Then there's Lioness, who are doing something truly unique in sex tech, using biofeedback and orgasm data to help people better understand their arousal. I'm also partnering with Flow and Desire, science-backed libido support supplements designed to support sexual vitality and well-being. These are brands that I find genuinely interesting, science-backed, and I've used them myself, so they come with my recommendation. You can find the links to all of them in the episode description. If you try them, use the links below. It supports the show at no extra cost to you. And now, back to today's conversation. The following conversation explores one of the most misunderstood aspects of kink, what it means to choose surrender and to find identity within it. My guest is Daniika, a submissive masochist and self-identified slave living within a 24/7 power exchange dynamic. Together we explore the psychology of pain, the meaning behind words like ownership and property, and what it actually looks like to live a life structured around trust, power, and intentional surrender. We also dive into the role of neurodivergence in kink, how structure and control can create safety rather than restriction, and why submission for some people feels less like a role and more like a core part of who they are. At the core of this conversation, we ask, what if submission isn't something you do, but something you are? Enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today I'm excited to be exploring the erotic realm of Daniika. Welcome, Daniika.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Good to have you. So, first of all, we want to hear about you and what you get up to outside of kink. What does your day-to-day life look like right now, and what are you up to in terms of fun activities or hobbies?
So pretty I'm relatively a homebody. So I work my normal job from home. Sit here and type my little Excel spreadsheets. Play a lot of video games. Me and my master watch TV. We watch movies together. I don't get out much, but when I do go, I like to find good little bakeries and coffee shops. There's a new crepe store that opened up downtown. I need to go check that out. So that is kind of my day-to-day life. Is I work from home, I play some video games, usually with this cat on my lap that I've got right now,
Cute.
which is great for heat. Yeah, especially in the winter. Ever since I moved farther north, I've appreciated the warm cat on the lap more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very, despite living in an MS dynamic that's like 24/7 and TPE and all of that, my everyday life is very normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like everybody else, I go to work, I have my hobbies, still have to put gas in my car, go grocery shopping, um, you know, all the normal things
Yeah.
with a little bit of nerdiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What video games do you play? I'm curious.
I used to be really into World of Warcraft.
Uh-huh.
I do not have the time for that level of dedication anymore. It's like a little mini part-time job. So now I do more things that don't require such a big time commitment, like Genshin Impact, RimWorld. I just booted up Baldur's Gate again. I think I've played that one 4 or 5 times, but I've never actually reached the end.
Uh-huh.
So maybe this time we'll try.
Okay.
Uh, lots of RPGs, city builders, just something where I can kind of just turn my brain off a little bit.
Fun. Awesome. I'm a Counter-Strike nerd from way back. Yeah.
Yes, I have played that.
Yeah.
Used to
Fun.
be big into Call of Duty and all of that kind of stuff too when I still had a console.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Love it. Okay, let's get into the fun stuff, the kinky stuff. When you talk about your eroticism, how do you currently identify both in terms of your sexuality and your kinky self?
So I am demisexual, pansexual, and then I am a slave in a master slave BDSM dynamic. So I generally need a connection with somebody before I'm interested in doing much of anything with them. Like I'll go out and get coffee with them as a friend, but like in terms of kinky activities or dating or sex or anything like that, I need some kind of connection. I also don't care what kind of parts are down there. It doesn't matter to me. I care more about the human inside, what their life goals are, what they want out of life, their empathy, how good of a person they are. I can do anything with anything down there, that don't matter. So I've never
Mm-hmm.
been too concerned about that. And then as far as like the kink stuff goes, I have always been on the right side of the slash. So like, the submissive, slave, bottomy type energy. Um, I've never had much of an interest or desire to have like that dominant type role. So I've identified as a slave because I want my dynamic to only have to see. The easiest way for me to describe this is I tend not to identify as a submissive because submissives like they renegotiate, like not necessarily with their dynamic, but in their own heads. Kind of like, am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do this. No, I won't do that. I only wanted to have to choose once when I put my collar on. So, slave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think
Okay.
I got them all. Did I
Yeah,
miss one
yeah.
of them?
Oh, I'm not sure. You talked about your sexuality and your kinky self, and that's what I asked. So you covered a fair bit. I think you covered both of those things. Hmm. And what about your current kinky life? What do you enjoy in terms of kinks the most? I normally ask people about their top 3 kinks currently and why.
Impact play is going to be my top. I am a masochist through and through, and I very much enjoy being hit with things in a consensual manner. Um, Next up would probably be most of what I do involves pain play. So I'm trying to think of something that doesn't involve like actually hitting somebody. Rope. I'm not too much into the like artistic decorative type ties, but suspensions and ties on the floor that are a little bit more sophisticated and painful, that's pretty high up there too. Um, and then for a third one, let's see here, anything involving boots.
Boots.
Um, yep, boots.
What is it about boots?
I don't know. It's something about being less than, being underneath, being I like being stepped on. Um, I like licking my master's boots. I've never been somebody that thought I had any kind of foot fetish, and I really don't. But for some reason, with him and his boots and him stepping on me and me being able to clean them for him and take care of him and that kind of thing has kind of like really pushed itself up my kink list
Mm.
as our dynamic has grown.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
kind of like Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
please. No, continue.
Oh, I was going to say it's kind of like a physical way of representing our dynamic with me underneath him.
Mm.
And I think with the way my brain works, I really like being able to physically see something happening because it's almost like that object permanence type thing where like, if you're like looking for something in the fridge and it's like not in the front row, it's not there. So having something to like physically see how our dynamic is working helps me stay grounded and remember, and the stomping on me with the boots and that kind of thing does that.
Mm-hmm. And is it normally a more masculine style boot that you enjoy? Or I was thinking about like high heel boots as
Huh.
well.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know if I'd really have a preference now that you bring that up. I mean, obviously, my master is male, so he's got the masculine style boots. But that being said, if there was a femme presenting person that had high heeled boots and wanted, that would be fine. I've never I've never done that, but I
Oh.
don't think it's so much of a gender attachment to it as it
Mm-hmm.
is less more just being under somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a particular color and style of boot that you enjoy?
Anything black and anything leather.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Something about the smell of leather. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you used the word slave just before. Now, this can be a triggering word for some people or quite an intense word for some listeners that might not understand what exactly you mean by that. So I'd love to dive deeper into
Yes.
it. What does being a slave actually mean to you?
Yes. So I know what you're talking about, and I've seen some similar pushbacks. It has a very heavy history attached to it. And some people are definitely pushed away, and I have no problem with that. There's folks out there who identify very similar to me, but they choose not to use that label. It's whatever suits you. When I'm talking about it, I don't mean like the old historical chattel type slavery. I mean something that is consensual and negotiated and uplifting and growth related and not detrimental to you as a human being. Um, it's an authority type structure, our dynamic. So with him as the master and me as the slave, he leads and I follow. His role is to lead me in the best way that he can, without harming me, and make me happy and keep me on a good path and all of those things. And then my role is to serve him, to obey him, to um, you know do all of those types of things. But even the obedience is not, it's not a blind obedience. I'm not supposed to just, yes sir, every single thing. I'm allowed to ask questions. I'm allowed to ask for clarification. Um, I do technically have, a safe word still. I can always ask him for mercy. Um, we talk, we communicate so much. Um, and this whole thing is more about trust and consistency and building a life together in ways that build each other up
Mm.
more than it is about control and all of that. Like I'm a very capable person. I have a lot of potential, but I kind of like shoot myself in the foot a lot. The neurodivergence and everything else. Like I can do all the things, but I'm lacking in the motivation or the time or the skills or, whatever else. And he's able to step in and kind of like restructure all of that for me and turn me into like, a semi-functional human being into a thriving human being. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I've been in this dynamic for a little over 3 years now, and at this point, I'm not sure I recognize the person I was before, but not like in a bad way. Like, I mean, I had just come out of a divorce, and now, I've got a car, I've got a savings account, I've got like friends, and I'm doing very well at my job, and like all these things are very objectively good. Um, so that's more what I mean when I'm talking about a slave is somebody who is following another person, who is leading them well. Everything's consensual. You negotiated everything. And then you're building each other up. You're building a dynamic where you both support each other, and you can, kind of cover your weakness with the other person. Just like, a lot of this comes across as maybe me being more dependent on him, but we both lean on each other. He relies on me for service, even stupid little things like filling his water bottle. It's one less thing that he has to worry about throughout the day. So yeah, it's a very harsh sounding word, and it brings up a lot of emotions in people, but my experience with it in like the real world and meeting real couples who use kind of language, it's a lot more gentler and more realistic than probably the image that a lot of people have in their heads.
Very well articulated, and it sounds like you have a wonderful relationship with your sir and all of the positive changes that have happened in your life. That's amazing. Why do you think the term slave suits you more than submissive? Because some people might push back and be like, oh, well, just use submissive and not slave.
That I think goes back to the overall headspaces that they're in, and just the way they think about their dynamics. And obviously you can't, paint this all with one broad brush. And I found that most people pull from multiple angles. Like there's no book on this. There's no categories. You must do all of these and you cannot do any of these sort of things. But I've always found that the more extreme versions of things, the more structured versions of things, the more I needed to give more than what a submissive might give. My headspace needed to be more concrete, less loopholes. I'll frame it that way. If I see a loophole, if I see any kind of way out, I will take it. Even if it is not in my best interest, I will take it. So identifying as a slave and living in an MS dynamic, that's kind of like a way of me saving myself from shooting myself in the foot, because I don't have those quick outs anymore. I have to do what I am supposed to do. And it's actually worked out really well for me. I don't know if I'd recommend that approach for a lot of people, but I needed that little extra push. And I've always felt more aligned. Maybe it's the neurodivergence, I don't know, that pulls me to the like ends of the spectrum on things. Because I've noticed that's kind of a trend, but that might also have something to do with it, why I'm pulled to slave. But I think a lot of it comes back to the headspace and me. I negotiated for my collar. I said yes to my master when I accepted his collar. And now, a year and a half down the road, and he asks me to do something, it's not a question in my head whether I'm going to do it or not, because I already consented to that a year and a half ago. I didn't want to have to be arguing with myself every day. Do I consent? Do I consent? Do I consent? No, I consented a year and a half ago. And as long as everything is healthy and fine and we're happy and we're still communicating, then that still stands. So it's also kind of like less mental gymnastics kind of going on in my head. I can just kind of streamline that process. Which also kind of helps because it's just less things in my head. I know the answer is yes, and we can just move on to the next thing.
So how did you meet your partner?
I met him at a BDSM lunch in town about 3.5 years ago. He was leading it at the time, and then I actually approached him and asked if we could have a scene. And then a few months down the road, I asked if we could have a dynamic. So yeah.
And can you take us into the process? So you met, and then eventually a few months later, you asked about a dynamic. Some people have hard limits around how long of time they want to pass before they will consider a collar, for example. That's come up a few times on the podcast. Did you have particular limit in mind around that? How did you approach the total power exchange?
So the whole thing, I can try and summarize everything, but when we met and I asked for a heavy impact scene, And I think it was during that scene, at some point I realized like, oh shit, I think that this might be the person for me. So we kept talking for a while, and then I did ask for the dynamic, and we went into a consideration period. Um, we used the consideration period because we believe that collars are rather permanent. We do not want to have to remove one. Like, he doesn't never wants to have to take this off of me, and I don't ever want to have to give it back. Um, People have different meanings and values that they put on collars. We treat ours more significant than a wedding band. So we wanted to make sure everything was good to go and all the boxes were checked before this thing was ever even, talked about or placed around my neck, because that's kind of a heavy burden to have to like give up or take back later down the road. So we did the consideration period. He told me that it would probably be about a year, but that there was no like set time frame on it. He wanted both of us to be comfortable and feel like we were ready to go, rather than have like a set deadline and then feel like, oh shit, the years come up. What do we do? What do we do? So ours actually went on for 18 months. And
Mm-hmm.
then um, I had my own little rule that, he knew I had this. It was basically like, I need to be able to live in your house for 6 months without going absolutely mad before I accept your collar, because what we were going for was like a 24/7, a TPE, like live-in type situation. So I didn't want to have to accept this before I knew I could actually live there. Um, and when we met, I was still living with a previous partner. I'm polyamorous, so I had another partner when I met my master, and I was still living with the first. We ended up splitting up during the consideration period. So at that time, I moved in. I think we had been under consideration for about a year or so at that point. We went on another 6 months, and then another one of my master's rules was that I would have to ask for his collar. Um, and I know there's folks that do that differently too. Like, some dominants and masters will offer a collar when they feel like their submissive or slave is ready. And then my master wanted the opposite. He wanted me to ask for his collar when I felt like I was ready. So I did. Again, after 18 months. And then it took us like another 4 or 5 to get all the jewelry. Like, the collar was custom made at a local jeweler. We provided like the gemstone, and then they designed it. And then I've also got a bracelet, like a slave bracelet, and that took some time to hunt down and arrive at the house. So 4 or 5 more months down the road, and then I was finally collared, I think, like almost 2 years after we had, started the whole process of the dynamic.
Mm-hmm. And how did you personally know that you were ready? Did you have particular milestones that you wanted to reach in terms of ways that you tested your partner?
I try not to test him too much, or
Yeah.
at least try not to use that. I know what you're getting at.
Yes.
Because like he did that sort of thing to me. Like, he had to make sure that I was capable of
Mm-hmm.
of bending when he asked me to.
Mm.
And just like I also, I had to make sure that he was trustworthy, that he was consistent, um, that he would do what he said he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew that even after a year and a half, like, not all those boxes are going to be checked. They just say they wouldn't. This is a long-term dynamic type thing. And it's been over a year since I've been collared, and I've learned so much more since then. So I think eventually I reached the point where I was like, okay, I do trust you. I am capable of surrendering to you. I'm happy here. I'm very happy here. Obviously, I still have more to learn, and there will still be more changes, but really, like, I don't think the trust, the consistency, that sort of thing needs any more proof at this point. I
Mm.
trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the point where I finally said, okay, can I please have your collar?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really beautiful to hear that you led that process as well and you asked for it when you felt ready. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you've learned a lot since being collared. What's been your biggest learning?
Our lives changed pretty drastically after I got collared. My
Oh.
master stopped he stopped hosting a bunch, and I started hosting a bunch.
Mm.
And I started hosting a bunch of other type things. So on top of me being collared, I also got kind of shoved into this like group leadership type position. Um, so in my case, the service, I think, has like the little moments have definitely stepped up. The little moments of service, the little moments of obedience, just because I have become so much busier, I think, that over time I've needed maybe like less and less, like, a few moments kneeling at his feet. Um, and I'm not quite sure the best way of wording this and like splitting it out because these two things happened at almost the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like the surrender is deeper, the obedience is deeper. I do trust him and all the things. It's just we've experienced more and I've experienced so much more that I think most of like my growth has been me leaning on him to help carry me through all of this new stuff. Um, so, yeah, maybe there was more trust that could have been built after when I had asked for the collar because yeah, now we're doing all this new stuff and I'm having to trust him with all this new stuff too. But it's going, good and great and all the things. I think we're kind of like settling into a rhythm at this point.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Lovely. And we haven't spoken about it much yet, but you also describe yourself as a masochist. What do you
Yes.
personally get from pain? Can you take us into the psychology of your masochism?
So I never actually clicked onto this until I had been in the kink world for a couple years, but I have lots
Mm.
of tattoos, like lots and lots of tattoos. Full sleeves, my legs are done, my chest's done, my hands are done. And I used to have a rolling tattoo appointment. It was every 2 weeks. I would go and sit for, an hour or two in my tattooer's chair. And, then I moved to Washington and I got involved in kink and I realized I was a masochist. And it clicked to me that you know, back when I was getting all these tattoos done, that was grounding. Having an hour or two where it was just pain and there was nothing else going on in my world and my head's not spinning and my ADHD brain isn't, running in circles. There's just pain. And I found that so grounding, and I still do, except now, I've kind of run out of space on my body for tattoos, and I've moved on to like paddles and whips and needles and that kind of thing. Um, but most of the time, it is grounding for me. It is
Mm.
just a release, a space away. Um, but there's other reasons. I like the marks. I like the pretty marks that some of the impact implements give. The colors of the bruises, I think they can be really aesthetically pleasing. Um, there's also like the art aspect of it and the endurance aspect of it, like the I made it through, I did it kind of thing. Like there was, I attempted to do a hook pull a couple years ago where I had hooks, like 8 gauge hooks put in my back. Um, and I made it that far. I never actually got like hung up by the hooks, but it was still, it's like a sense of accomplishment of like, I did that. I was able to do that. Look at this horrible thing. It was stuck in my back, but I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's a big part of it too. But the biggest driver is just the calming, the headspace, the rush of endorphins that you get. Um, and just the connection, the centering, the trust that I'm putting in somebody else to do these things to me, but like also watch over me at the same time and make sure that I'm okay. Um, that's a pretty big part of it too.
Mm. Mm-hmm. So, one of the traditions on the podcast is exploring a quote with you. And I want to bring in a quote here because it feels deeply connected to what you're describing. And it's actually from Rumi, who most people know as a 13th century Sufi mystic and poet. And one of his most well known quotes is this: "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Now, thinking about your pain, do you feel like your relationship to pain has been shaped by something deeper in you and that it's a place where the light enters you in a way?
I do like that quote.
Mm.
I think even outside of physical pain, that's relevant.
In
But
what way?
with like heavy changes hurt.
Mm.
Anything that causes you strife, I think, has the opportunity to open you up to better things,
Hmm.
to give you that kind of motivation and that push. Like with physical pain, I do think, and also in sort of a similar way, like me and my master use that as a very connective type thing, and I allow him to paddle me or to whip me or whatever we're using and control the flow of emotions out of that, control the environment, the vibe, and I can come out of that feeling lighter, feeling happier, feeling more relieved. Um, if we've gone like a cathartic direction with it and I've cried, I can feel like a weight's been lifted off of me. Um, yeah, I think that's fairly accurate.
Hmm. Hmm. So let's unpack the beginning of your journey into becoming a slave a little bit now. How did your journey into kink begin? How did you discover the kink world?
So the very, very first thing that I can probably place where I actively like participated and was there and actually turned my brain on a little bit was at a Pride festival down in Phoenix in Arizona. Probably, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. They had like a booth set up and a St. Andrew's cross and somebody doing flogging. So I, of course, volunteered for that.
Hmm.
And I enjoyed that. And it was great. And I was married at the time, and me and my ex-husband tried it, but turns out we were both right side of the slash humans. So we were both of the subby variety, um, which can work. But when you have two folks that both really, really want that and want that dynamic, it didn't work for us. We both wanted to be monogamous, and we both want at the time, and we both wanted a dominant. So we ended our marriage, and I ended up moving away. Um, I moved back to my home. I'm actually Canadian, so I moved back to my home country. I moved back to Canada, lived up there for a while, and of course, I was in the middle of nowhere. So I got into the online communities, where I found the hypnosis community. And that really stuck with me because I like the whole, like the idea, the illusion of no control. That really sold me.
Mm.
Um, because I don't think like I'm not one of those people that believes mind control is like a real thing, but I do believe like that trance is a real thing. Like, if you've ever been like driving on a straight road and you kind of like space off for a minute or two,
Hmm.
basically same feeling as hypnosis. You're tranced a little bit. So I joined that community, and that's where I learned more about the actual types of dynamics like DS dynamics and MS and different kinks and all of these things. And then you have this whole mental playground basically because you're working with hypnosis. You don't need a dungeon or toys or any of those things. You just, you got somebody's head.
Mm.
So I was able to kind of like, without actually physically doing any of this, I was able to explore quite a bit, just through that community and through hypnosis. Eventually, I decided I need to go touch grass and interact with people in the real world. So I went to a munch in person, and that's where I met my master, and then that's where the rest of the story picks up.
Mm-hmm. So, with your first Pride experience, you mentioned in the podcast form about that and flogging as a pivotal moment for you. Was there a particular thing that you saw at Pride in terms of the flogging that really stood out?
I don't think it was something that I saw. It was so they had a big tent set up with
Hmm.
the crosses and an audience, and they asked for volunteers to, go stand on stage and have this done publicly. And I'm very much a let's do it once and see what happens kind of person. So I,
Mm.
I, I volunteered for it, and I actually really, really liked it, um, a lot, like way more than I thought I would. It was very like I could almost space out. if somebody's just going at my back with a flogger very, very lightly, I can almost fall asleep. Like I probably could fall asleep. It's so relaxing. Um, and that's kind of the experience I got there at Pride. So I was like, I need to go find more of this, please.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did you realize that you didn't just enjoy kink, but that you wanted a life of total power exchange?
So the hypnosis, I think, had a pretty big part in that. I learned that you cannot do this like all the time. You cannot do the kink all the time. But I still had that like desire to have like this overarching type feeling that something was there. So that kind of pushed me a little bit into TPE. And then also once I had started touching grass and interacting with people and going to parties and events and things like that in my community, and I started playing with other people, I realized that I didn't particularly enjoy being hit when there wasn't some kind of like energy exchange or power dynamic going on.
Mm.
Um, I'm like, then you're just hitting me, and that's not
Uh-huh.
very fun. And I had kind of had the same experience with rope and with needles and with almost every other kink that I've tried. So it just kind of over time I realized I just need a little bit more, like just more. I like this, but I need there to be something overarching, like a reason, a purpose, a goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there'd be a lot of people listening that might wonder what every day in a 24/7 dynamic looks like. Can you take us into your everyday reality? Perhaps you could share a little bit about what's happened throughout the last week for you. You mentioned before we started recording that you had a meeting of sorts yesterday with your owner. Uh, yeah, can you share a bit about what your day-to-day life is like as a slave?
Yeah. So I can do like a whole normal 24/7 thing.
Cool.
I have my bracelet and my collar, which a lot of people do not take these 24/7 things off. I do because mine are fine jewelry. They would tangle up in my hair and they would probably rust in the shower because they're made of silver. So they come off when I go before I go to bed. And then in the mornings, I will wake up and the first thing I do is put my slave bracelet back on. I go fill my master's water bottle, feed my cat, make my coffee, wake up. Um, After I take my shower in the mornings, I bring my collar out to my master, and we have a little ritual protocol where he puts that on for me. And I kneel at his feet, and we kind of just take a couple moments and remember why we're doing this and why we care about each other and all of those things. And then I will usually go about my day. Um, I work from home, so I will, check on him throughout the day, just like he checks on me. Sometimes he makes me lunch, sometimes I make him lunch. Um, we go through, I'll play video games in the afternoon, and then we eat dinner together. My master usually actually cooks dinner because he's a better cook than me, and I also have a little bit of I'm a wonderful baker, a horrible cook with dinner. So that's his responsibility. We eat dinner as a family, him, me, and then my sister. When I say sister, I mean sister slave, so his other slave. All three of us live in the house together. We all eat dinner together, and then we kind of have our evening where we'll watch TV or we'll have a scene. Um, I'm usually kneeling at his feet by the couch. My sister's usually laying up on the other side, and we kind of just enjoy the evening as a family. On weekends, we usually host events, especially in the summer. We kind of close down for the winter because it snows here and the gates kind of get locked shut. So, summer, we host events on the weekends. This past weekend, yesterday, we hosted Power Exchange together. So that is like a discussion group that we host at our house. There we talk about, yesterday's was about creating opportunities. So we have 15 to 30 people that come over and hang out in my basement, and we talk about various power exchange topics. We've done things like 24/7 in the real world. Like I said, yesterday's was creating opportunities. We did burnout and power exchange. We've got a developing protocols for your dynamic one coming up. Um, We also host a monthly munch. Sometimes we have a party going. Like I've got a whip and needle jam and my birthday party going next weekend. So um, we usually only get one weekend off a month where we don't have like an event or people coming over or doing anything. So we kind of try to cherish those weekends and spend a lot of time together as a family. Um, but yeah, it's a lot more normal, I think, than some people might realize. Like,
Mm.
we spend a lot of time sitting, well, I sit on the floor, but he spends a lot of time sitting on the couch watching TV. Like I still work. I wear clothes at home. He would probably like it if I didn't, but I have sensory issues and like the wind touching on all my skin is just too much. So, I wear clothes. Um, yeah, it's very it's busy, but it's good busy.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned a few times about your neurodivergence and how that impacts different aspects of your kink. Can you take us a little bit more into that, and how does power exchange interact with that part of you?
So I'm not at a loss for realizing that part of the reason why I'm drawn into these higher control dynamics is because of the neurodivergence, because they are able to provide the structure that I need, that a lot of places in our world are lacking. Um, it has the empathy and the ability to work with me in ways that I just when I tried it in the vanilla context, it just did not work. Like my master corrects me pretty frequently because I do mess up a lot. But he's never made me feel bad about it. He's never shamed me. He's never the way he's always approached things has always felt more human to me than any vanilla relationship I've experienced. There's expected roles and standards and like there's set things that everybody should be doing in these dynamics. You know what your role is. You know what the expectations are. And even having that was huge for me with the neurodivergence. Having consistency be a baseline and required and expected and there was actually follow through and actually accountability. I'm sure there are vanilla relationships out there that have these things. I was just never fortunate enough to find one.
Mm.
But I did I did find all of those things when I found an MS dynamic. So all of that just kind of clicked to me. And I found a community of people who were very, very similar to me and very willing to let me keep trying until I got it right instead of just like pushing me off to the side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to dive into this a little bit deeper with a piece of research that I found, because this research actually challenges how people often think about kink. It's a recent study by Wignall, and they developed something called the Kink Orientation Scale. And what they suggest is that kink isn't just something people do, it's something that exists across identity, desire, practice, and communication. And they suggest it's not binary, it's a spectrum and it's an orientation. So when you hear that kink is identity, not just behavior, does that resonate with you? Do you feel that your kink is a part of your sexual orientation and not just something you do?
Yes, very much actually. Especially with the dynamic part of it and the masochism part. Those are I see them as fundamental pieces of me that if I removed them, I wouldn't be me.
Mm.
Um, they aren't pieces that I turn off and on. They're not something that I can step into and step out of. It's just there. It just is. Um, Even when I go like to work, and I work in I'm one of those manager type people. So I have, the power and the authority and whatnot,
Hmm.
which is completely opposite from my life at home. But even then, my slave self, my kinky self hasn't really gone away. I'm using a lot of the same skills. I'm just directing them in like a different manner.
Mm.
Um, at least that's how I've always viewed it. Because a lot of the things that make me a decent slave also make me a decent leader. I don't like being in charge. So
Hmm. Can you speak a bit more to that? Like, what are the similar things that you're doing?
so grace, accountability, yeah, with like the manager type role, like,
Mm.
I've had to learn to let people fail, to let them to give them the best things that will help them with what they're doing and what they need. Like if I have a person who is really really good at geology, I am not going to send them to go do something that is completely unrelated to rocks.
Right.
I'm going to go send them on things related to rocks. um, and that is like very, very similar to what I can do here at home at the house with our family. Like things that I am very good at become my responsibility within our dynamic, like baking. I'm really good at that. So I do the desserts. Cooking, not so good at that. My master does that. And it's kind of like you learn how to distribute things, you learn how to let people try. You learn how to fail, you learn how to let others fail. You learn how to be graceful in your speech, how to tell people that they need to try again or try harder or try it this other way over here without making them feel bad. Um, and I've been able to take a lot of that and kind of bring it into the dynamic or vice versa. Um, like my communication with my master, I'm doing it from the other side, but now I'm like, need to be, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not subservient, but I need to be looking up to him and his responses,
Mm.
kind of like flip around what I be doing at work, but I see them as, this two sides of the same sort of spectrum.
Mm. Hmm. Fascinating. Now, something stuck out to me there. You mentioned that your master does the cooking. And for some people listening, they may have this idea when you've been talking that your master may not do anything at the home or, less practical things because he has two slaves around. So, can you speak a little bit to that and how people might get the wrong idea about what's happening?
Yeah, so there's definitely different like distributions of labor as you go through this type of community, but so me and my sister both work full time. We both have relatively demanding jobs where we work like 10 hours a day, and we are completely wiped and exhausted by the time we are done. Um, my master is retired. He's much, much older than I. We have a 19-year age gap. Um, so he has a little bit more free time, and he also enjoys cooking. So to take a little bit of stress off of us so that we have that decompression time so that we are able to let go of all the work stuff that's in our heads and kind of reorient ourselves into our roles and, him and the house. He takes care of cooking to give us that time. Um, we're all capable of making dinner and, we all do from time to time. If he's sick, one of us will step in and make food. Um, just like my sister usually makes their coffee in the morning. If for some reason she forgets, I just do it. It's not a big deal. um, we all kind of it's still a house like every other family out there. We still have a house to run.
Hmm.
There's still chores to be done. He's still somebody's got to vacuum, somebody's got to, you know. So he does what he can to help us because he doesn't want us to feel like we are completely drowning. Like yes, we are there to serve him and to make him happy and obey and be devoted and all of those things, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't help or
Mm.
doesn't participate or chip in or all of those things, because he knows that him doing that leaves us with more time and more spoons and more ability to do the things that he really wants us to do, like, kneel at his feet and fun kinky time and all of those things.
Hmm. Isn't it interesting? Because if someone was just to have a quick look at your life and saw him in the kitchen cooking and the two of you going to work, they might get a completely different idea
Right.
about how things are set up.
Yeah, the stereotypes are not helpful.
Hmm.
And we're not even out of all the MS couples that I know, we're not it is relatively common I've found for the master to be doing the cooking. Um, they seem to like to cook and, they're the master. They get to make the decisions. If they want to make dinner, they're making dinner.
Hmm.
Um,
So back to identity and kink as an orientation. Do you feel like being a slave is something that you chose or something that fits who you are?
it is something that fits who I am. I
Hmm.
think if I had more choice in the matter, I might have went with something easier. Um, this is
Right.
not particularly easy. Surrendering some to somebody and letting them make choices for you, it sounds very romanticized and fun and all of those things, but when you're actually sitting there and they're making a choice that you don't want, um, it's not the easiest thing in the world to go along with that. So I think if I was choosing, I would have went with something maybe a little bit less temporary, but it turns out this is what I need. This is what makes me successful. This is what makes me thrive. So even though I do have those difficult moments where it's like, I really don't want to do this right now, but I will because I love you. Um, those are not, they're so few and far between. Um, More often it is more, oh, this is for our dynamic. My master wants this. Okay, I will do it. Um, and that makes me happy. So,
Are you able to give us an example of something that he wanted you to do that you found hard to do?
um, any of the public speaking stuff. It's
Mm.
gotten it's gotten easier, but he will tell me, so he started me off very easy. He's very good at this. Even like 3 years ago, he was having me help him with parties and stuff. And I showed up at his house one day a few hours before a party was about to start, and he's like, "You have a job. You're gonna go downstairs and hand water bottles out to people and greet them as they come in and drop off their play bags." And I'm just sitting there staring at him wide-eyed, like, "What? You want me to do what?" Um, so I did do that and it was fine. Everybody got their water. I said hi. It was good. I was not, no meltdowns or anything like that. And because he pushed me through that first time, the second time was easier. And then the third time was not a problem at all. Um, and there's been other like little things like that where like, he wants me to go get the oil changed on my car or something. And I think it's unnecessary right now and I don't want to. And, blah, 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 blah. I go and I do it anyway, and, more often than not, he was right and I was not, and listening to him just kind of saves me a little bit of hassle down the road, and after 3 years of this, I've kind of learned that, just things like that, just trust him. There's probably some little piece of information you don't know, so just trust him, 'cause it's gonna be more
Mm.
pain if you don't.
What would you say people most misunderstand about consent in total power exchange? Are you allowed to say no?
So technically, I am not allowed to say no. Do I say no? Yeah, I'm not the best at that. Sometimes it comes out. I try not to. I really do try. But it's not so much like you can't ever refuse something. It's
Mm.
more that the word no doesn't really, it says no. That's all it says is no, which is totally fine and valid for like 99.999% of the population. But he is not in that group. In order for him to lead me, he actually needs information as to why I am refusing something. Because I could tell him, no, I don't want to do that. But what I really mean is, I don't understand what you're asking. Maybe it means I can't do that right now. Maybe it means I'm scared. Maybe it means I don't want to do that today. Maybe it means I do want to do that, but, blah, 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 blah. And he needs that little piece in order to make the right decisions so that he doesn't actually hurt me and so that he, guides me in a good way. So technically, I can't say no. But if he asks me to do something that I don't want to do, I could say something like, Master, I'm not sure that's a good idea right now because XYZ. Um, And now that he has that extra information, he can say, okay, then it's not a good idea right now. Let's go do this instead.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
some people hear it as like a control freak type thing where it's like, oh, you can never refuse or you can never blah. It's just that's not, I can refuse. I just have to use a few extra words.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so as part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something that's influenced your eroticism, such as a quote, a book, or a movie. What have you brought along today, and how has it shaped your erotic realm?
Yes. So I looked, so I really wanted to find some kind of movie that wasn't 50 Shades of Grey. And the one I ended up landing on was actually Hellraiser.
Okay.
Um, I'm a huge horror movie buff fan, and this one came out while and I probably saw it like way younger than I should have. But the plays between pleasure and pain in that movie, I think maybe probably did quite spark something in me because the masochism and all the things that I am into today, I don't know if that was the source, but that probably definitely at least planted some seeds.
Can you give an example? Because I haven't seen that.
There are a lot of like BDSM type imagery, lots
Mm-hmm.
of like restraints, lots of, pin face with all the needles and all the blood and these basically like not really demons, but creatures, demonish creatures that gain pleasure from other people's pain.
Mm.
And I've never really identified as a sadist, but I did kind of at least identify with the pleasure from pain portion of it. Um, especially as I got older and I started doing, like the tattoos and the piercings and things like that, and I realized, oh, there is something to this more than it hurts. Um, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about you. Were you going to say something?
Oh no, no, sorry, I
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
taking a breath.
yeah. Let's talk about your own experiences now. I'm curious to hear from you. What's a peak erotic experience from all of your time in the kink scene and perhaps your time as a slave? What comes to mind when I ask you about a peak erotic experience, a time that's really stuck with you?
One of the bigger ones is that hook pull that I mentioned earlier.
Mm.
Um, that was while I was still in under consideration with my master, and we drove out of state to some of his old friend's house for that. And it was this whole huge event where somebody had constructed this like 20-foot tall like suspension apparatus thing. Like it was massive and made out of wood, and like we helped them get this thing stood up. And I remember getting the hooks jabbed through my back and then also at the same time letting my master know, please, I don't want to do this. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. I don't want to do this. But I we have CNC in our dynamic. So that is not enough for him to actually stop. I would have had to say mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did not say mercy. So we kept going with it. And that really stuck with me as something where I needed a partner that would not back down on me because that was one of the problems that I had always had, where I would get a little bit frightful or something like that and look like I want to stop, but I don't actually. I just need that little extra push. And
Mm.
I think that was the moment where he proved to me he was completely capable of that. Um, which was one of the big things that I needed. And I think that's one of the reasons why that has stuck with me so much. Also because like 8 gauge, that is large, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I was in my back and I'm just that's also just gonna stick with me for a while. Um one of the other ones would be we did had a really fun impact scene where somebody actually took a card game. I forget exactly which game it was. It was some matching card game, and they made like a whole new version for kink. Like they swapped out all the pictures with like different kink type pictures, and then they swapped out all the words, and then we played this card game, and then instead of moving pieces across the board, they just hit me in the ass. um so that was also really really fun, and that kind of got me into like kinky impact games, which I've
Mm.
looked into. the one that I want to try once it gets a little bit warmer is Battleship. I want to try Battleship on two people's backs with like needles or something. Don't know how well this would work, but adding kink into games that's also I really enjoy that too.
So creative and nerdy. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something from your past. What about your future? You mentioned the battleships. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to exploring?
We will probably start going to conventions this year and next year. So I know we're planning to go to Leather Rain in Seattle in November, so that'll be fun. I have not actually I've done conventions before, but like gaming conventions. Like I've been to BlizzCon in Anaheim with, for World of Warcraft and Overwatch and that kind of thing. So we're going to go do a kink convention this fall.
Love it.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And there's a few others around the country. So if the first one goes well, we might do more. So yeah, that's our next big plans.
A lot to look forward to.
Yes.
So Daniika, what do you hope listeners take away from hearing your story today?
That MS dynamics are human and achievable and very much probably not what people think if you're coming off of like the internet and porn. Like the fun stuff is still there. We still do all the fun stuff that you see on the internet, but 90% of our lives are not that and are much more similar, I think, to probably what everybody listening to this probably does with their life.
And if you had to describe your erotic self in one word and one word only, what would it be and why?
Gremlin. So I'm a bit of a brat. I am a bit of a loopholer. I am a bit of I will find a way to make it work, and I'll probably make you laugh while I'm trying to do it. Yeah, and don't feed me after midnight. But yeah, I would go with Gremlin. That's also the name that my master calls me. My master and my sister call me the Gremlin. So yeah.
Well, Daniika, thank you for sharing such a thoughtful and honest perspective on power, pain, and identity. You've taken something many people misunderstand on the surface and articulated it so well, especially the deeper structure, trust, and meaning underneath it. So thank you for taking us into your erotic realm today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Well, thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Erotic Realm Podcast. This is an independent podcast. If you want to see more episodes made, you can support it at psychologyofdesire.com by becoming a paid subscriber and entering the realm with many other supporters. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize kink and desire in all of its forms. And we can't do that without you. Until the next time, stay perverted.